So, hello and welcome to this edition of What Makes a Difference. And the other weekend, so that would be a week ago, 20th, 19th, 20th.
Mm-hmm.
We conducted a workshop with the support staff and some veterans from the South Wales area.
Mm-hmm. We did.
Yeah. And one of the questions we got asked was, how do you resolve a little bit of drama, wasn't it?
Yeah.
No, we never get into any drama at all, do we? So we can help you with
that. They obviously missed the drama we got into the week before.
Well, yeah, they're not watching us, are they? Unless some people stop it.
So there are a couple of things that you and I do on a regular basis that's probably a little bit different from most people to help reduce and resolve drama.
Yes.
Is it worth mentioning some of those for people?
Well, that's what we're doing, isn't it? I think get a bit drama. Get a bit of drama here now.
You're like, oh no, my head's just fried.
Yeah. No, exactly. That's why we're doing this podcast, isn't it? This particular episode is to go through a couple of strategies that we utilise to resolve those spiky situations, as it were.
Well, also to prevent them in the first place. Sometimes...
Well, not prevent, maybe reduce, because you never know what's going to happen in a conversation, do we?
Yeah, I suppose. I think what came up is that sometimes when you are in your friendships, your personal relationships, your work relationships, a common pattern can be that point where you're having a discussion with somebody, and then before you know it, you're walking on eggshells, and they've got it feels like all of a sudden the tone's changed, and all of a sudden you're in that cusp point of a falling out, and you're not really quite sure how that's got there.
Yes.
And I'm wondering how much of that is because of overwhelm.
Probably some of it, but I'd also think is there may be a lack of context as what's going on or what's being asked of the person.
So one of the things that you and I do that I think we're generally quite good at is we'll do a temperature check with each other in the morning when we're working together, or when we get together to do some work.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because both you and I have the podcast, we've got the CIC, and we've got other things that we do as well. So life gets very, very busy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And, well, one of the comments from that weekend was, you two are like chalk and cheese.
Well, no, we're not. Yeah, we are.
Yeah. And so how we kind of think in certain ways can be maybe disruptive to how the other person thinks. Mm-hmm. So one of us, probably me, can tend to rush into some things a bit more than what Ali's thought process is, because I tend to want to get things down on paper or on the page if we write a document, and I'd like to think of things through. That can really disrupt your pattern of thinking.
And if you're in flow and you've decided you're off and running, then you get very frustrated when I try and interrupt that.
Yeah. Yeah. So
you just need to
talk how we resolve that.
Well, sometimes that's the more interesting points of drama. But we do collect them as well. We tend to afterwards, we give them names so we can collect them and shoot and use them, because they're learning experiences for us.
They're useful for everybody.
Yeah, they're useful. So will we talk about the temperature check?
Yeah, start there.
Yeah.
Yeah, it makes sense.
So probably the handy thing is we're pretty open in terms of what's going on in each other's calendar and what time commitments we've got. We have to manage it all. But that also means that allows us to see when the other person is really quite heavily loaded with stuff and activities.
Yeah.
So, for instance, this morning, I know that the next couple of days and the last couple of days have been really busy for you. So today I said to you, where's your head at and how much space have you got for in terms of content or depth or that sort of stuff?
Mm-hmm.
And you'll do the same for me.
Yeah, it was, we can talk about what we're going to talk about, but not too much in depth or not too heavy.
Yeah.
So that allows Ali to give the permission of, right, okay, we can do stuff, but I'm not going to go wandering off talking about a completely different subject.
Or want to get really detailed in planning or, that sort of thing, because I know the capacity is this shape.
Yeah.
And if I go over that capacity, I either need to check that I've got consents and your head's going, okay, I can do that, so that we're still bounding it.
Mm-hmm.
Or that means that I need to then have you and I have a conversation that says, okay, if there is more detail done, how do we do it? What's going to work for you?
We can address that maybe at a later date.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Ali might take some notes somewhere and jot them down and we can revise them later somewhere.
Yeah. So that there's a
mutual consent, really, isn't it?
There is mutual consent, but there's also, I think what also works really well there is that because we have that agreement up front, then that also gives both you and I permission at any point to go, I'm at capacity here.
Yeah. So the typical kind of question we ask each other is, what's happening for you at the moment, isn't it? Or what's good for you today?
Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And if we do, if there's that change, then that also doesn't give us permission to go, right, hold on a minute. Can we just take, 5, 10, 20 minutes?
Mm-hmm. The other nice thing I think it does, though, is it's built that awareness for us where if we are working on something that is quite intense, or we are getting to a point where one or other of us is at the point where my head's bust with this, mm-hmm. then we have the pattern where it's okay to say.
Yeah. And that also goes back to what you're saying about overwhelm as well, isn't it?
Yeah.
And one of the topics you come across is that working memory and that processing, isn't it? Especially if there's somebody with MD or those traits of, mm-hmm. and they may be given a task and it's like, why have you done this task yet? You're on my time schedule. No, I'm not. It'll get done. I just got to process how it's going to get done.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so one of the classic differences between you and I is once we've made a decision we're going to do something, you just want to get stuck in and get it done. I need to know all the process blocks and the order, and then I can start.
Yeah.
But you and I have learnt that about each other as we've worked together. It's not something we knew straight away. We had to kind of sit back and go, okay, what's going on here? Normally when we got into bed,
Yeah, and the other thing that we do as well is, so if we do notice that drama is coming in, we ask at the time is, okay, when would you like to resolve this? Are you happy in a few minutes' time or a couple of days' time? What's the time span to get this resolved? Mm-hmm. And there's also then that check-in at that time as well. Is you happy to resolve this now, or do you need a bit more time?
Yeah. Well, I think we're also
it takes that pressure off, doesn't it?
It does, and I think we're also quite good at going, okay, should we take 5 minutes here?
Yeah. Yeah.
Which, again, gives both of us a bit of time to process, to organise what it is we want to say. And that normally means that when that 5-minute break is over, or the 10-minute break, then that would be okay. So there was a bit of spikiness there. But again, and I know we've mentioned this before, but it's important because that wording doesn't attach it to you or me.
No.
And therefore, there's no blame.
Mm-hmm.
It's just an acknowledgement.
Yeah, and I think that's quite a powerful thing to recognise is it's not about us, it's about the situation that's going on between.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what, so when we were at that workshop and as one of the participants and this particular person was asking about how we resolve all this, they were like saying, so I've got to put the time frame, go, no, we asked that person. So it takes pressure off that person to be, we are doing this here and there and we are sticking to the time frame.
I think that's particularly important because sometimes we need a while to recognise our emotions and recognise what's going on with them. Because just because you and I suddenly end up in a conversation where things are spiky doesn't mean to say it might be something that's directly related to either what we're working at or something that one or other of us is doing that's maybe due to lack of awareness.
Mm-hmm.
It could be that a topic's been brought up that maybe is related to different experiences for either one of us. So what we've got going on is that emotional hit from something else. I know certainly that's happened for me. But it takes me a while to process that, where I've gone, actually, that had nothing to do with this. It's something else entirely.
Yeah.
But that gives me the space to process that, to place it, and to be able to find the right words to be able to say, this is it.
Mm-hmm. Because I might not have the words immediately. No.
And I might not have figured it out immediately. I need that space.
Yeah.
And I think that happens a lot with people.
Well, a lot of people, they want to close that loop, don't they? So they want that answer straight away. And that person, as you say, may not be in the best mental space to have that conversation.
Do you know what I also think? When I'm thinking about it, Rich, as we're talking, there's this common phrase that you're told, like winning advice on how to make relationships work, and it can apply regardless of the nature of the relationship, is never to go to bed in an argument. Mm-hmm. Never go to sleep in an argument. But actually, I don't think that's correct, nor do I think that's always healthy.
Yeah.
What I would translate that to is don't leave it with a distance, because the acknowledging that I need space or the other person needs space closes the distance. It removes the distance between me and the other person.
Yeah.
Without putting pressure on it to be able to name and discuss what's actually happening.
Yeah. And I'm going to reference my friend. And so his partner, for her, a healthy relationship is having full-blown arguments. Mm. And for him, it was the complete opposite. Mm-hmm. So you've got these two contrasting people, and that's really could be quite a difficult thing to resolve.
Yeah. But I think the other thing is when you have...
So, yeah, sorry, Ali, that's what I was going to get onto is, so she would want to resolve that argument there and then, mm-hmm. But because they may not have the language or communication skills at that particular time, the argument just end up being circular. Mm-hmm. So it's breaking that pattern of that circular thing and finding somewhere out of that particular loop.
Well, I'm wondering how many people will recognise that scenario where there's an argument happening. They've been a bit blindsided by it, or they've been their partner or their friend or whoever they're arguing with has shared this whole host of emotions with them. They then don't know what to do with those emotions. The person they're arguing with gets frustrated, so keeps pushing for an immediate response. They get overwhelmed. And then the only way for them to respond feels like they have to leave. So they exit, storm off, leave, go away. Can't use phrases like, I can't talk about this stuff. I don't want to talk about this. But what they're actually saying is, I'm at capacity.
Yeah. And if that does get pursued, it might end up, unfortunately, in domestic violence.
Or a deeper fracture of that relationship. And then the person that you're having that disagreement with might feel rejected, might feel as though you're not listening. And actually, none of that is going on. It's just that you're at capacity and you need processing space so you can come back and finish that conversation off.
Yeah.
The strategy that you and I use acknowledges that there's capacity. It establishes what each of our capacity is at any given time, because that changes depending on what else is going on.
Well, that's the old trading rhythm, isn't it? So that, for those people who don't know, it's like your natural biological rhythm. Every 90 minutes, your body's working on a clock. And then roughly 20 minutes, you need to take a break away from what you're doing. But then that, obviously, the cycle repeats itself again.
Well, I think it's about that, but it's also sometimes about recognising that we might not have all of the information.
No.
So if you've got lots of commitments elsewhere and you're fitting the stuff that we're doing in round about that, or I'm the same, then it gets to the point where it can be quite stressful in terms of the things you're juggling. So you might not have as much processing space as you would have if your diary was clear.
Yeah.
So that's where we kind of were a bit more sympathetic towards each other, but that also works in your own, in other relationships. So what if instead, when you're starting to feel quite overwhelmed, what if you started to build the pattern where you said to the other person, can I have some space just now? Because I'm hearing you. I know this is important to you, but I need to process what you've told me. I need to have a think about that because I don't know how I feel about that right now.
And as well, there may be context missing.
Yeah.
Or there may be misunderstanding what is being asked.
Well, I know certainly that sometimes if you're now having even conversations about what about we do this or that, then sometimes there's a delay and either one of us come back and go, can we go over that again? I've got a bit more questions about that, because sometimes it takes a while for everything else to catch up. It's funny because I know the people that you now work with are putting that into play with their relationships. Pretty much universally, they come back and say they're getting different responses.
Yeah.
Recent feedback I got was my relationship with a partner is the best it's ever been. Because they're now learning the same language, and just like you and I do that for each other, they're now doing that for each other, so that's a case of if they're having quite a deep and intense conversation, one or other of them will check in and go, are you okay for me to keep going, or do you need a break just now to have a think about it? Absolutely. And that means neither of them feel isolated and left out.
Yeah. And if your company or organisation would like to learn how to have better relationships and how to communicate better, then drop us an email at hello@whatmakesthedifference.org.
And if you as an individual want to do the same, because this stuff makes big differences, and again, drop us a line.
Yeah. So how do people recognise that they are at capacity? So a lot of people would have patterns. That would vary on the individual. Is there some people who've told you, oh, this is what's going on for me when I am at capacity?
Okay, let me turn that about then. My inappropriate ADHD brain has just said, I'm going to phrase this as you show me yours and I'll show you mine. But that what really translates to is, what's overwhelm like for you?
Yeah. What is it like? Yeah.
How do you know when you're at capacity?
There's a sense of freeze. And I guess it's kind of like it'd be at a shop where all the shutters are down. So you got the stocks in, but no one's at home.
So you shut down and I'm assuming from your descriptions, does that mean it's almost like there's a withdrawal and a pullback?
No, it's just like frozen.
Frozen?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, because there's no room to go, oh, I need this or I need that or this was going on. It's just a case of frozen. So, you know, you've got the shutters down for the shop. There's all that stuff going on in there. You know, somebody might be in the background doing all the stock checking or cashing up or whatever it is. But the outside is like, yeah, blank, nothing's going on.
What would I see when that happens, and what would I hear when that happens?
You just like hours of silence, possibly. Yeah, it's like that rabbit, deer in the proverbial headlights. Oh, stunned look.
No matter how many questions there are, nothing happens.
Nothing's going on.
But there's lots going on.
Yeah, there's just too much going on more than anything. And you don't have that capacity to obviously sort it all out.
That means it's my turn.
No, go on then. Yeah.
So when I'm at capacity or at overwhelm, I won't necessarily show it, but inside there's like an escalation of anxiety. I'm getting more and more anxious and frustrated. And it's like the thoughts are circulating because normally it's because quite a lot of it would be the lack of context for me. It's like I feel as though I'm blind and I'm lost now. So it's almost like I've been ejected from the situation. I'm on the outside looking in. I can't find my way back into that because I don't have enough, or I don't have an understanding, or the blocks for me are not making sense. So it's almost like somebody's taking the blocks of the argument and throwing them all up in the air, and I'm like, what? Where am I here?
And is there anything else about like lost and blocks up in the air?
Yeah, sometimes it feels almost as if I'm spinning in the spot, and it can feel quite lonely. It's almost like because I become separated from that, I've got all this stuff that I don't know what to do with. I don't know how to make sense of it. And the hard part is then, what do I do next to make sense of it? Because I'm outside it now.
Yeah. And what happens just before spinning on the spot?
Good question. I lose the place. It's like everything's been okay up to this point, and there comes a tipping point. It's almost like the Jack in the Box moment where everything just becomes that one bit too much that maybe I can't quite make the connection for, and it just blows the whole lot up, and now I'm lost.
Yeah.
Maybe it's something that I haven't anticipated, or that's not playing out the way I thought it was going to play out, or could be any number of things, but it's just that one extra thing that now means that nothing of what's gone before or round about it, I can't make sense of that now. I don't know what to do with it or where to place it.
Yeah. And then what would be the useful thing to recognise that you are in that sense of being overwhelmed?
Well, you and I had that conversation the last time we got into a bit of drama, didn't we? Because what happened then was literally I got to the point where the Jack in the Box actually physically happened, almost where I was like, and you were like, oh, I'm there. Forever known as the clipboards conversation.
Yeah.
But I think the solution we came to the end of that one was that both you and I had to kind of practice. Well, not had to, but it would be helpful if we practiced almost that check-in more often in terms of that.
Yeah. And because in that situation, I know I did, I came quite entrenched in my belief set.
It's like, leave me alone. I've started and I want to keep going now.
Yes, exactly.
Don't interrupt.
Yeah. But eventually, yeah, so we resolved that anyway.
Yeah, I think, again, but what comes from that resolution is we now have richer agreements over what we see. 'Cause the conversation was very much about, one, how do I stop that overwhelm before it gets to that point, and the other one was how you respond differently and what we both needed to do for each other in that situation. Check.
Yeah. And it's amazing how conversation about clipboards can kind of like a friend of mine. Again, another friend called John. And so I bought him a shepherd's crook, and he's walking up his driveway, and his wife was like, "What have you got there?" Anyway, so he brings it in, and so one of the lads, he's playing around with a shepherd's crook, and he's there he's herding all the dogs and stuff, and my friend's wife's going ape shit about this shepherd's crook, and my friend John, he's like, "It's not the shepherd's crook. Sorry, it's not the shepherd's crook. It's what the lad's doing. It's his behaviour. It's nothing to do with the shepherd's crook." But her fixation was on the shepherd's crook rather than the behaviour of what the lad was doing with the dogs by just hooking my neck and herding. Yeah.
And you could argue our argument wasn't about the clipboards. It was never about the clipboards.
No,
it was about what was going on outside of that.
Yeah,
putting us both into our own version of too much.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I suppose my takeaway from that, so we had that conversation on the weekend, and what some people were worried about was, would that make them more vulnerable in terms of, well, what happens if somebody uses that against me?
Well, I think it's useful setting healthy boundaries, isn't it? Or it's a tool to set those healthy boundaries because you are giving that person context about what you want or where you're mentally at the moment.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think it actually prevents that issue rather than causes it. I think it makes each person safer.
Mm-hmm.
Because in a way, as you said, Richard, this is about boundaries, but this is about each person sharing that and going, this is important to me.
Yeah.
It's just it's done in a much more clear way.
And that one of the topics that we can really do workshop on for people is it helps to remove ambiguity when we're looking for evidence.
I think probably pretty much it's almost like I'm teaching myself and you about me, and I'm learning about you. Which is, again, almost like that trade and contract that says it's really helpful if I share this with you and if you share that with me, because then we have a mutual point of understanding.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And if the other person chooses not to honour that, then that's a boundary.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And that's a question about why. And if that why and what's causing that disregard of that boundary, because it might just be they need to get used to it and it's new habits that need to be built.
Mm-hmm.
You don't.
It doesn't come overnight, does it?
It doesn't come overnight. It takes work.
Yeah. Well, the old adage is Rome wasn't built in a day.
Well, you now work at this every single day. We have these patterns we consciously choose to use every single day.
Yeah.
It does take work.
Yeah. What's your takeaways in, Ali?
But sometimes if you think somebody's ignoring you or not listening, that's maybe the very opposite of what's going on. And that not everything has to be solved immediately. And you can still have that closeness. And it doesn't mean to say there's distance. And that's achieved through acknowledging the other person's need for processing time or space. In a way, it's very respectful. it's asking for that respectful response from the other person, and you telling what's respectful for your space and time too. What about you? What are your takeaways?
Go back and so when we did that modelling of got the shops and the shutters down and all that, go over and listen to those questions that we asked each other, and that'll help you with quite a bit of finding out what's going on with that person. It'll also help that person understand what's going on with them as well. Mm-hmm. So that person then gets a metaphor. Mm-hmm. And then you can use that metaphor. Okay, so are your shop shutters down for the day, are they? Or are they half open or whatever it is?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, find a way to build the language, isn't it? So that
yeah. As you say, it builds that mutual understanding and go, oh, okay, this is what's going on with you today. Mm-hmm. And when will the shop be open? That conversation.
What do you need for the shop to reopen?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Because a question you and I will quite often ask each other is, what do you need from me right now? What will help?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And so thank you all for listening.
Try it and see what happens. Practice it. Sit down and discuss it with the key people in your life and go, how about we try this? And see what happens when you do that consistently over time. You might be surprised. You might be very pleasantly surprised.
Yeah. So thank you all for listening.
Until next time. And where can we find us?
We're on YouTube and Spotify, plus a couple of other places. And if you would like to find out more about how we can work with you,
you can contact us at hello@whatmakesthedifference.org or our email accounts, which are on the show notes. And you can also drop us a message through LinkedIn, Facebook, on the YouTube channel as well.
And also we are on X, Twitter, or whatever you'd like to call it as well.
X and TikTok.
Yeah.
So we'd love to hear from you. Let us know what you think. Have a go. Let us know how it works out.
And it's goodbye from me.
And it's goodbye from him.
Exactly.